What's happening, family? It is your man, CRB Jr., Cordy Robert Brown Jr. here at Big Boss Filmworks, Motown Mafia podcast production. To my left is my brother, my partner, Lewis. What's up, bro?
Man,
Talk to the fam.
doing good. How's everybody?
Everything good this Halloween?
I know, right? Trick or treat.
Trick or treat? Give me
Heavy
some.
on the tricks.
Yeah, Pops used to always talk about growing up, the trick or treat bandits.
Oh,
Yeah, story is, man, back in the day was running a spot.
Okay.
And niggas came with the mask and the candy. So he used to always be growing up, be like, nigga, boy, watch out for the trick or treat bandits.
Oh, yeah.
Which leads to that scene.
Well, in the scene in Motown Mafia, the award-winning documentary, where Mr. Brown reaches down in the handful of candy.
Why he used to keep the pistol at the end of at the bottom of the Halloween bag of candy.
There you go.
See, that come from his man, the trick or treat bandits.
Them trick or treat bandits gotta watch it.
You gotta watch the trick or treat bandits. So yeah, we hope everybody's good out there, family. And so before we get started, you guys, we appreciate the growth of the channel and all of the above.
Thanks a million.
So make sure you guys are hitting that like, share, and subscribe button, and that notification button, right?
And the notification bell.
Yeah, so
Smash it.
We got a lot of hot stuff coming. Just dropped a lot of new content, and a lot going on at Big Boss Filmworks nowadays, Lewis.
Big time.
But yeah, man. So I think you're aware that Dame Dash had announced two things: that he's doing his Honor Up Part 2.
Okay.
And that he was starting the pre-production for Paid in Full Part 2.
Oh, yeah, the new Paid in Full. Oh, yeah, it takes place in D.C.?
Well, I think, okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. There's a gentleman by the name of Ears to Christ. You guys who follow this kind of stuff have probably seen him on, he's got a lot of YouTube stuff. He's been on Vlad TV. This is the great question in this urban genre now that it's become so mainstream and everybody's doing movies. Is obviously the original Paid in Full has become a
timeless classic at this point.
Right?
Right.
The Rich Porter Alpo AZ story is legend. So the question is that this guy, Ears to Christ, and we're going to go into his story a little bit and why he thinks if there is a Paid in Full Part 2 that it has to be DC based.
Okay.
And how he would be pretty much one of the main characters in this, and he's got some plans also to work on I think the project, he said if he didn't link up with Dame Dash and they did something together, that he would do like a fully paid, which would be the DC version. So the way the story goes, Lewis, this is like early and mid 80s. DC is, by the mid 80s, is really becoming a murder capital and crack capital of America. Or one of them.
All right.
So there's a gentleman by the name, his street name is Ears to Christ. He hooks up with a guy who's a little bit older than him, a guy by the name of Andre Johnson, aka his name is Tank. And again, I really like this guy, Ears to Christ. I'm always a sucker for guys who talk slick, that really are about their business. And he seems to really be one of those kind of guys that, even though he talk kind of slick and he talk crazy a little bit, but he is who he is.
Gotcha.
I could have seen myself giving him some work.
Okay.
Or telling the old man, Pops, this is a good guy. I know nigga a little bit crazy.
Right.
But he gonna pay his ticket. He's serious about his business. And I don't think we got to worry about nobody taking our shit if he holding it.
Right.
He seems to be that kind of gentleman. I really enjoy his content when he does it. So you got this guy, Ears to Christ, hooks up with this guy by the name of Andre Johnson, R.I.P. now actually, whose street name was Tank.
Okay.
Their story is very much just like whether it's the story of mobsters Lucky Luciano and Meyer Lansky when they were young, poor kids growing up in the ghettos of New York, the Jewish and Italian ghettos of New York. Or
Okay.
Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown growing up in Black Bottom in a somewhat economically challenged environment. And, there's always that common thread in these kind of stories.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Young men coming in financially challenging situations look for ways to change their situation.
Yeah.
So they start off being enterprising young men with petty crime, as often do. Most hustlers start off as small criminals before they become big criminals. Their thing was they had stolen all of the keys to all like the vending machines and soda machines. They had rolled the custodian, like the head custodian at the school.
Okay.
And they took the master keys.
Okay.
So they had access to all the vending machines and video games. So that was like their first hustle, right?
Okay.
And they become quarter kingpins. They have all the quarters in the world because they're emptying out the vending machines.
Right, right.
Right? They progress from that to, it's really a DC phenomenon. I don't know if you're familiar with in DC. PCP, they call Love Boat. PCP was a big, and all my...
This isn't like Angel Dust.
Angel Dust. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar.
DC's the only town I really ever knew where black people, I should say, really were into it.
Okay.
But that was always a thing because that was like during my college days and when we would visit or friends would visit Howard University and things. And
so is this the early 80s?
This is like the early 80s.
Okay.
But I think that PCP or Love Boat or Angel Dust have been big in DC since maybe the 60s. But like here in Detroit, you just never heard about people. I mean, maybe some white kids.
I vaguely remember, and this is, the big anti-drug campaign from the early 80s. I'm giving away my age, but I was in elementary school and we would see different like terrifying videos and so on and so forth, and they told us to stay away from that angel dust. I mean, in fact, Gil Scott-Heron had a song called Angel Dust.
What?
Yeah, it was it around that time. It was like 1980, maybe 1979.
Okay. So right, I think this is like early 80s that this Andre Johnson and Ears to Christ are kids, and they're starting to peddle this angel dust.
Okay.
They make themselves a little money. They have some little tragedy where their stash gets compromised, and they're out of the angel dust business. But as powdered cocaine was beginning to really enter America, this is still the transition over from the disco era, where powdered coke had really become was still kind of expensive. So the main masses of people still were not, but the price was beginning to fall a little bit, and it was not just a drug for the elite.
This is like around that Richard Pryor freebase time.
A little bit of that. That's right. So there is no such word as crack yet.
Right.
So they talk about, he talks about how they then transitioned from the PCP thing into the powdered cocaine business. And it recalled me to a story I think we've told on the station before, that me and Eddie Jr., our friend, shout out to the big homie out there.
Yeah, what up?
The big homie gave me and Big a bag, and this is Highland Park era, so this is like 86.
Okay.
Like 86. And we took it over to, shout out to Scotty D. We were at Jabba the Hutt. Shout out to Trace. Shout out to Jabba the Hutt. Love your comments, Hutt. And when Eddie Jr., when Eddie Baby gives the bag to Scott says, man, really, people don't want powder no more. Everybody cooking it up. And it was such it struck me, I was like,
so that term was completely new to you, cooking it up.
I mean, I had heard it, but it was, right.
It was
the fact that they already, he had a better pulse on the street, because we were buying powder from Cascade.
Okay.
5'5" people was over there on Cascade, and then we had been, me and since I had met Pep and them in 84, 85. I mean, powder was all around,
Right.
and it was what people in the in crowd, was doing.
Yeah, I mean, it was the elitist.
But about that time, 86, here in Detroit. And so, and I'm trying to draw the parallel that none of this stuff happens in the vacuum.
No.
So as people were starting to transition from powder to cooking it up in Detroit, that phenomenon, give or take a couple months, was happening everywhere. Places like New York might have been a little bit ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
L.A. a little bit ahead. Maybe L.A. or the Bay Area might have been really ahead of the curve. But anyway, as the natural progression of the normal urban hustler in this era goes, it went from powder cocaine, and then people start cooking it up and they start smoking it.
Right.
What we now know is crack, but again, that term had not even come out yet.
Okay.
Then they start smoking crack. They start selling crack, rather. Let me clean that up. These guys, what I think was very impressive about them, they did not seem to be users at all.
Okay.
These two
about the money.
These two young men were very much about the money.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he talks, Here's to Christ talks about a couple of the edicts that his man, Dre, who was kind of the leader of the two, would scold people in their crew if they talked bad or called people crackheads or dope fiends. And he was like, they're people, man, and they're our customers, and you people should treat them right. And I was like, wow,
that sounds very familiar.
Sounds like he had read the Eddie Jackson play that, these are human beings, man, and there's no reason. We're making money, and they're the people spending money with us, and there's no reason to, degrade them.
That's right.
And he, a couple good stories, anecdotes, how he would pay the people who were addicted to clean up the neighborhood and things like that, so that it was at least somewhat of a win-win situation. They move up the ranks, as again happens in these kind of stories. Here's to Christ and his man Andre Tank Johnson. First time there was a big phenomenon. So of course, this is, if you read the Crack Era by Kevin Childs, he ended up having a stint where a lot of the big fellas, Kevin moved his operation down to D.C. Of course, Alpo Martinez started coming down to D.C. And there was always a lot of the reason why the homicide rate in D.C. spiked.
Okay.
Had a lot to do with so many guys from New York coming down there and all of the street politics.
Bringing the funk.
That ended up pursuing. So they move up. They get a connect from these guys in Brooklyn. They eventually outgrow them. They hook up with another guy by the name of Kurt Bones, whose acronym was CB.
Mm-hmm.
He's also been chronicled on Vlad and a few other platforms to cover this kind of stuff. He had a pretty interesting story too. I had to do a little more research on Mr. Bones, really talk about his situation. But he was a major guy in D.C. Mm-hmm. So now Ears to Christ and Andre then hooked up with him. I guess they banging so tough. Old boy Kurt Bones is like, look, man, you guys I've made a fortune off of you guys in a month. I'll just turn you guys over to the plug.
Right.
And I believe the two plugs that he turned them on, one was a Colombian connect.
Okay.
And the other one
big
was,
in the 80s.
Another one was, a guy by the name of Alpo Martinez.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, but what you just said about the 80s, oh, how the mighty have fallen. In the 80s, there were lots of black guys who had direct Colombian connections.
Right on.
No Mexican middleman.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's all you used to hear about is my Colombian connect.
Right. I mean, because the Colombians, wanted to cut everybody out to deal.
Right.
The 80s was crazy. The Colombians were like, shit, who's selling this stuff? The black guys. Mm-hmm. So why do we want necessarily a Dominican middleman or a Cuban middleman? Or what would come to be mainly now when the Mexicans organize themselves, the Mexicans to be a buffer when we can... it's called in business being vertical. We can take it directly out the ground. Mm-hmm. Well, even though the Colombians actually get it from Peru and Ecuador, mostly Peru. It's that cocaine isn't really grown in Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
But Bolivia and Peru is where it's grown.
Mm-hmm.
But it is processed in Colombia.
Okay.
Or the majority of it is processed in Colombia. So anyway, the Colombians... We're dealing directly with a lot of black guys right here in Detroit, New York. People had direct access, which meant the price went. Guys like Demetrius had Colombian connects, right?
Right.
Well, these guys, Shout out to Spencer Holloway, brother from back in the day, who's sitting down right now. We're going to talk about Spencer. Hopefully he'll be getting a break soon and getting out. But back to the story. So now they're hooked up. They've been introduced to Alpo Martinez. They've been introduced to the Colombian. They're just doing their thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys have become street legends in D.C., right?
Right.
But this is the part I want to talk about. So I think this stuff is going on. Ears to Christ is like 15, 16, 17. The brother Andre RP is maybe went to college, so he had to be 4 or 5 years older than him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a story that I just found fascinating. So Ears to Christ is 15 years old. He's got an apartment out in Maryland, right outside of D.C.
Okay.
They're not paying the rent. They come to get an eviction. He's being evicted because these young men, despite all... Anyway, what started over an eviction, the sheriff coming for an eviction,
Mm-hmm.
he is rated at 15 years old. He has $1.5 million in cash inside of his home and 20 keys and 20 of them things.
Ooh.
20 bricks. At 15, 1.5 million in the 80s, which is, 3 million, probably 2.5 million today's money, easy.
Mm-hmm.
20 of them things. 15 years old. So I want the audience, sometimes when we were hearing these stories, man, it's not making excuses, but we all try to go back to being 15 years old and think about trying to manage your life if you were 15 with 1.5 million in cash and that kind of access to the bag.
Mm.
And of course, this is where it becomes a deadly mix, because you hear the story that my man Ears to Christ be telling, and it's a situation where he's sleeping with this other homie out that was there, this man who all become street legends, Big Head Gary. They sleep, it's a bunch of high school shit. I'm sleeping with the cheerleader who's sleeping with the quarterback, who's sleeping with the basketball star.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is, they're playing a life and death game, a real grown man game with teenager mentality and emotional maturity. So you got millions of bucks on the line, but the young men involved in this stuff, I mean, at 15, you can only know so much about life.
Yeah.
And they're sleeping with young ladies who are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, who only have the maturity of a 15, 16, 17-year-old young lady. And there's all kind of little schoolyard games going on between these guys getting money, where they're sleeping with this broad says she's pregnant from this other deal player. Just all the same shit that went on at your high school. Except it's happening with these guys with the backdrop that they handling millions of dollars.
Right. I was gonna say just throw the Scarface backdrop in the whole situation.
To your high school
15.
Dynamics.
Right, to a high school dynamic.
And so that's the part again. And so when we be talking about this stuff, but the crazy part is, this kid catches a case. He ends up, him and his man Dre end up losing 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I had $5,000 in my pocket. He's like, when they busted in the place, I was telling him, I can pay the rent. Just
he doesn't, right.
Think about the idea of having 1.5 million and you get busted because you behind on rent.
Man, come on.
You gotta hear it. You gotta check him out. I mean, he's all over.
Wow.
We don't hate around here. You can check out my man Ears on Say Cheese TV.
Yeah, big up.
That white boy who got a big platform.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can check him out on that too. Our white Jewish friend who's got a big platform. You can
yes.
You can find Ears' interview on that too. But a lot of them would be thinking about why so much money come out the streets in our community and it ain't nothing to show for it. Unfortunately, the 15-year-old is the one in your community with the 1.5 million in cash.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna end up getting squandered. And this crew, him and his man, seem to be much more mature than most. I mean, they bought some nice whips. I mean, they was buying Benzes and stuff. But considering the kind of money they were handling,
Right.
not really.
Yeah, and I told you a minute back. I don't know if you ever got a chance to check that episode out of Miami Vice.
No, I got to.
Man, it's an episode. If anybody's out there, that the Miami Vice fans, check out The Good Collar. That was basically this story in a nutshell. 15-year-old. Well, no, he was 16 to be fair. He had a stretched Lincoln limousine, mega rich, millionaire, obviously.
Right.
2 girls in the back seat, and then Crockett comes up to try to score from him, and then he's like, talk to the man. It's definitely, they had their ear to the street back then.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it was a phenomenon. The 80s.
Yeah.
The 70s saw the creation of the urban kingpin, and the 80s saw the creation of the teenage urban kingpin.
Yes.
Which brings all of
because all the kingpins had gotten locked away.
The disorder, because 15-year-olds aren't supposed to have 1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
Back to it. So yeah, man, as we were saying, so crazy absolute anecdote again. I suggest everybody check out my man Ears to Christ. We need to reach out. I really, when we get some things settled early next year, I'd love to reach out to him. We can go out to D.C.
Yeah,
I'd go out to D.C. to talk to the man. I'd fly him.
Be a great interview.
I'd fly him into Detroit. Yeah, he's worthy. I mean, I follow this stuff and this guy ever since I started checking out his content. I've always found it compelling because, again, like we were discussing, like with my brother, shout out to Eddie Baby down there in Florida. Some guys, when they telling their story,
right,
you just know they live.
They're the real deal.
Yeah,
you know
this guy. You can't act when he's spitting his game. You can't act that.
That's Eddie Baby.
You either was there and you did it, or you wasn't and you heard about it.
That's right.
And you can tell he didn't hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
That he lived.
He was in it.
He lived it. So it gets real. So they've met Alpo.
Mm-hmm.
They got the Colombian thing. All kind of street politics is going on. Him and this man get that fight. They take the hit. They lose that 1.5 million because the rent didn't get paid. They lose their 20 bricks. He's 15, so he only does at that time 4 months on this because he's a minor. His man Andre get their game back going. They restack back up, and they start doing business with Alpo.
Okay.
He goes on, tells a little story that that they was moving more than Alpo. It's like, I thought you were supposed to be a big fella, kingpin's kingpin. He's like, and they'd be going to try to buy 50 joints, and Alpo be like, I only got 33, and he'd be like, but I thought you was, see, you ain't what you say,
right.
You ain't what I see, like streets blowing you up bigger than what you is.
Right.
And Alpo began to catch some feelings because they dealing with this Colombian who, of course, is giving him a better ticket than what he can.
Right.
So now he in his feelings.
Yeah.
He in his feelings.
Yeah,
and they sleeping with his man's woman and all kind of, again, some real high school kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
But tragedy would beset this situation. Again, you guys really need to go and check out the full story, and I encourage you to, because we do not hate around here. But the long story short of it was, they had decided, Andre, and Ears had decided they was going to take their bag and go out to California, get involved in the rap business.
Okay.
They was sitting on they had re-upped, they were over $1 million in cash, still had 25 things.
Mm-hmm.
And his man Ears says his man Dre told him, look, I'm going to shoot this one last move. I'm going to spend this $270,000 just so we have a little extra working money for this California move. So I'm going to holler at Alpo. And Ears say he told him, man, kind of fuck him and fuck that. We good. We don't really need it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was like, Dre was the one calling the shots. And so he tells him, man, look, if you're going to go meet this guy, he's talking about Alpo. He's like, make sure you come get me. Of course, his fate would have it. He went to meet Alpo by himself. He didn't bring his man with him.
Oh,
They rob and kill Dre, take the 270,000. And he has been on a personal mission since then, of course, to avenge his man's death.
Right.
So when they're like asking him about how did you feel when Alpo was killed, he was like, I was happy, but I was sad. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy's a real street guy.
Right.
He's a real street guy.
I couldn't get to him first.
That's exactly what he said. He was like, I was happy, but he was like, I'll be honest, man. He's like, I was running up, once he got out, I was running up to New York. I was camping out. I was like, he's got a story about that after the shit that he had bumped in and found out that Alpo and Alpo's main hitman, muscle man Wayne Perry, were in this nightclub.
Okay.
And he was pissed at his crew because they didn't give him the heads up they were there. But anyway, when he finds out where Alpo is at, he goes to get his AK, camps out like on top of an 18-wheeler for like 6 hours.
Oh, wait.
Oh, no, Ears was serious about Ears. And he was like, man, I'm waiting.
Whoa.
He's like, I'm just waiting. I sat on their van for 6 hours. He's like, them niggas didn't come out.
That reminded me of your man Rooster talking about, I just wish.
Rooster, yeah, we had to kill him, man. Our security at one of our stores, the old school.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Rooster killer. Right? Rooster was real hardcore. When Pops got in that trouble, Rooster was like, I can camp up, I can set up on top of the courthouse. I was like, oh, fuck, Rooster, oh, no, don't say that. Do not say that. You can't. You got to leave the wife on. Rooster was
Rooster
similar style. Rooster was about his.
Oh yeah, Rooster was a trip. He used to be at the store. He's like, "Hey Lou," and I'm like, "Yeah." Hey, you need some guns. You need some guns. And I'm like, well, I don't really need none right now, Rooster. No, man, I'm gonna show you some guns.
Hey, let me tell you something. This Pops used to say, niggas is crazy. They be playing crazy. They ain't really crazy. Because we had some security problems before Rooster came and started being at the store. Once Rooster came to the store, we had zero theft issues.
Oh, man.
Because niggas knew he ain't here to sell outfits.
The first day I came to work in your establishment was the first day I met Rooster, and truthfully, I didn't really meet Rooster. I walked in, and there's this man about 5'3". He's standing in a corner with a gun taller than him, and I said, "Oh, okay, this is different." But I felt safe. Felt safe.
He made everyone felt safe at work. That was Pops doing. Brother Gregory Starks, they had robbed him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I told the old man that we had to stick up at the store, he was like, "Junior, don't worry, we got something for them. Don't worry about that." Next thing I know, he was like, "Junior, my man Rooster gonna start being up at the store. You ain't gonna have to worry about them niggas no more." And and Rooster would be so disappointed that nobody would
break in. He was like, "I just wanted."
So that's the way your man Ears was.
Yeah.
Ears just set up on top of the 18-wheeler. He's like, I dealt with Alpo and them niggas come out. They all about to, they gonna learn today. They gonna learn today. But even Alpo's paths never crossed. And then when Alpo did his 30 years, he still was on the mission. Like, no, I got to settle up. I got to settle up for my man.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating story. Again, so the thing is, the question is, I think the world of Dame, so I'm sure Dame will do right, and they'll figure it out. Ears' spin on the situation is, how can you do a paid in full tune that's based in D.C. and the dramas of himself, Andre, Alpo, the whole D.C. New York phenomenon. So I don't know, and he threw out a kind of an olive branch to Dame and said, if you want to get together and do something, we can get together and do something.
Yeah.
But either way, whoever does it, if they do it together or separately, again, just another fascinating story. But again, the 15 with 1.5 million and 20 joints. Man. I know how I behaved at 15 with 50,000.
Man, come on.
1.4, oh boy, it would for trouble. It would have been trouble.
Debauchery.
I mean, So anyway, yeah, fascinating story. Ears to Christ, man. Check them out.
Yeah.
2023 gonna definitely reach
Can't
out
wait
to the
to
brother.
check that one out.
Yeah, check them out. Yeah, it's a fascinating story out of DC, man.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that is that. That is that. Paid in Full 2, DC, New York. It's coming again. The mainstreaming of the hustle